Dear Lauren, 2 years ago, I discovered that my husband was having an affair with a colleague from his previous job. This colleague was also married, and our kids are the same age. My marriage ended after affair discovery, but his colleague's marriage remained intact. Their affair continued after our divorce, and, I believe, continues to this day. I hear about his affair partner and her child from my daughter, who spends time with them. The affair discovery and the divorce was traumatizing for me. I've been mostly focused on personal healing and recovery, but it nags at me as to whether or not the affair partner's husband should be told about the affair. In my heart, it doesn't feel right to meddle. The issue seems so much bigger than me, and if I'm being completely honest, I do still hold some fear about my ex-husband because he has anger problems, and I'm worried those would turn on me if he surmised that I'd informed her spouse about the affair. Also, somewhat selfishly, I know, I feel that karmically, if I tell her spouse, with my luck, her marriage would end, and she'd become my child's new step-parent in all of our lives forever. I can't imagine anything worse on top of what I've already gone through. Oddly, both the affair partner and her husband barely have any online presence, and I can't even figure out how I'd get in touch with either of them if I did want to. But there have been many times I've sat behind my computer and battled with myself on how hard I should try to find their contact information to reach out. I don't know the particulars of her marriage. For all I know, he could be abusive, already know about the affair, or be perfectly happy not knowing. Somehow it just doesn't feel right to me either way. Help. Sincerely, Healing. This letter hits on one of the most hot button topics when it comes to an affair. If you know about the affair, do you tell the spouse who doesn't know? Online, this has been met with a lot of different input. Some people feel that an unknowing spouse always deserves to know and should be informed. But when it's posed as the unknowing spouse being the spouse of perhaps a good friend of yours who's having an affair, people would be less likely to inform the spouse. It's clearly complicated, and it clearly depends on the individual circumstances and factors at play as to how it would affect the informant to inform. So lots of different layers always get presented. Everyone has an opinion. And here's what I know from my work as a therapist and just a human being so far. We never really know what we would do until we walk a mile in someone else's experience or shoes. We just think we would. That being said, I just want to be clear that I'm not taking today's letter from a place of being an ethical expert or from moral superiority about what one should do. I'm coming at this from the expertise and insight of a therapist. And here's what comes up for me around anyone who's in this quandary about should I tell or should I not tell? It's so important to examine our honest, real motives for anything that we do. My sense about today's letter writer is that part of what's keeping her from informing the unknowing husband of her ex-husband's affair partner is that she actually has the sense that her motives are not pure, that she is not making this choice out of some kind of moralism or ethical lens. She would be choosing to reach out of her own hurt and pain. And what I find in my practice is that most people, when they're walking in this space, do understand that blowing up an unknowing spouse's marriage, when it happens, is usually partially in retribution. Partially, there is a part of ourselves who is so deeply hurt and wounded that we don't want to be alone in that hurt. We want to see the person who had the affair with our spouse also have to deal with pain, discomfort, revelation, and the catastrophe of crisis that we are. It's human to not want to be alone in our suffering. And I think that sometimes the morality gets used as a little bit of a scapegoat to reach out and let the cat out of the bag, when really it's sort of like scratching an itch to not be holding a secret that could put some things in motion for someone else who we believe maybe deserves that kind of crisis or payback from what they've been engaging in. Somehow we feel that their spouse not knowing about the affair is allowing them to get off scot-free, that they had a clear and clean pass while our marriage went to hell in a handbasket. And now we have to deal with trauma and fallout from the betrayal. It sounds to me like Healing, who wrote this letter, understands that there's a layer to her that would be doing this out of retribution, revenge, vindictiveness, anger, or would get some sort of satisfaction out of letting the unknowing spouse know about the affair. And she's not comfortable with that. She is not at peace with the version of herself that has a relationship to those kind of feelings because she's on her path of healing. So the question that we can ask ourselves in this situation is, am I really doing what I believe is best for this other person? And here's the tricky part. None of us know what's actually best for another person. When we assign these blanket statements like someone who's betrayed always deserves to know, we're taking our own values and we're assigning that, we're deciding that for another person. The truth is, none of us know anything for anyone else. We are already struggling to know anything for ourselves most of the time. And so we're really just making an assumption based on maybe what we would want for ourselves, we would want to know. So we assume that everyone else would want to know. We also don't know what's going on in someone else's marriage, and we don't know if there's any safety risks or concerns. And it sounds like, again, Healing, this is part of why you hesitate, because you had some of that in your marriage. You have your own fears that are holding you back, and you don't know what you would be setting in motion for someone else's marriage and the interpersonal dynamics that are at play there. I also want to say, if you have concerns about your own emotional, physical, or mental safety or well-being, when it comes to your ex-husband and his treatment of you, I, as a therapist, certainly would support you making sure that you are taking care of yourself and your safety need. And if this affair partner being a permanent part of your daughter's life could be an unintended consequence of you letting the affair be known, and that's something that feels deeply reckless and irresponsible for you to play a role in, again, I think it's okay to make peace with your own reasons. There is no right and there is no wrong here. And I think that that's the most important part of, a lot of what we encounter in therapy is that gray area where what we need to do is have a conversation with ourselves about our own real motives. What is the path to our true peace and healing? How are we going to take care of ourselves in any given circumstance while still, being caring and responsible to the other people that we have responsibility to in our lives? And in this case, you have a responsibility to yourself and you have a responsibility to your daughter. And I completely understand that. You're probably always going to feel like there's something left undone when it comes to this. The affair was obviously catastrophically hurtful to you. It ended your marriage. And so it is a very strange place to be in, where you know that there's a parallel world. There's a parallel version in which another spouse doesn't know about everything that you know, and their life is seemingly humming along. But again, that's a picture that we've made up. That's a picture that we've created. We have no idea what that parallel world really looks like. And we also have no idea what is supposed to happen for another person or another couple. We have no idea what someone else's path is meant to take. And letting someone go on their own journey and staying in our own lane, sometimes when you don't know what to do, staying in our own lane is a sure bet. And taking care of ourselves and working on our own healing is the path. So again, when it comes to whether or not to tell an unknowing spouse, I think you have to ask yourself, what's the motive? What's the outcome? Am I looking for a certain outcome here? Because really, we don't know what the outcome's going to be. And sometimes we think we do when we step into a space where we're setting something else in motion or making something else known. So what I would recommend to you is to try to make peace with the reasons that you decided it doesn't behoove you to reach out to an unknowing spouse. And know that it probably would have felt bad either way. And that if their marriage is meant to end and they're meant to encounter some lessons or pain points of their own in their lifetime, that's to let happen on its own. And that's okay. You don't have to take the weight of the world on your shoulders. So I hope that this helps. I know this is a very hot button topic. I know that there are many people who will disagree and many who will agree and cite their own experiences as part of the proof that perhaps telling an unknowing spouse was a decision that they regretted or realized was coming from sources that were not perhaps as pure as they thought, or who didn't regret it at all and for whom it was absolutely the right decision. And again, when you're in therapy, it's really about asking, what is the right path forward for me, given my unique circumstances, all the players involved, and everything that I know about how I can move forward from a place of being as informed as I possibly can about my choices. When we're walking a path of healing, we're always asking ourselves, what is my work and what is someone else's work? What is my work and what is not my work? What are my lessons and what are not my lessons? And again, I think if we keep on coming back to those central questions, we're always going to find a space where we're growing. And there's a lot of healing in that. Staying focused on ourselves and knowing that each of our journeys are meant to unfold the way that they are meant to unfold. So if you're engaging with today's letter in the comments, whether on social media or right here in Substack, I encourage you to be respectful, kind, and understand that we are all coming from our own unique experiences in infidelity, affairs, and every tendril and fractal of choice and decision that ends up being handed to us because of it. I hope this helps.